Well, let's discuss the European issues that matter to young people with our audience here. We've filled these ancient walls of Norwich Castle with almost 200 young people, all ready to challenge our panel, representing both sides of the debate. Supporting the Leave campaign, we have Darren Grimes. He's a fashion student from Brighton and founder of the Believe campaign. Can he make you all believers? With him is Nerissa Chesterfield from the Institute of Economic Affairs and Tom Pursglove MP. He's the youngest Tory and the youngest English MP. He's co-founder of Grassroots Out. On the Remain side, we have Labour MP and member of Britain's Stronger in Europe, Lisa Nandy, the comedian Akhish Shah, and the award-winning author and blogger Juno Dawson. But let me begin with you, Darren. Come on, what drives you at 22 to get tangled with all this?
So I think that Britain's standing in the world is held back by membership of the European Union. I think that outside we can be a prosperous, liberal, free trading nation, you know, and that is the best thing for our generation. That is how we are going to secure jobs. That is how we are going to have a better future, not being held back by a declining Eurozone and having to fund further bailouts.
Well, you sound like a fully trained politician, not a fashion designer.
Absolutely
I like
not.
the shirt, but what about the politics?
Well, the politics, you know, that's just come from being very engaged in this debate and realising that this affects the rest of our lives.
Well, now, Ahir, I mean, standing in the world, that's what it's all about.
Yes, well, I think that we are fortunate enough to be a wealthy and prosperous and liberal nation, and I think that's only amplified by our membership of the European Union. I mean, one of the things that you brought up there is having to take part in further Eurozone bailouts, which we already know won't happen.
Absolutely not. They said that before the third Greece bailout of Greece, yet we did have to put into that bailout.
I think this is like contingent on the renegotiations that have currently happened.
No, it was written.
Forward,
it was written that we wouldn't have to, yet we did. You know.
I think he may be right just on the question of it's one of the Cameron opt-outs.
It is, yes, absolutely. But so was
so
the
from
third,
now on that wouldn't happen.
So was the third bailout though for Greece. That's what I'm saying. Yet we did have to.
Well, this is getting a bit technical. Let's get into the Institute of Economic Affairs. Nerissa, what drives you in this, and why are you so vigorously for the Leave campaign?
Well, I'd say number one, sovereignty is my biggest issue. And
you lie awake in the morning thinking about sovereignty?
I do. I think we have a fundamentally politically unaccountable Brussels at the moment, and I think that's wrong. I think we need to take back power. I think we need to make sure that we have the power to get rid of those who govern us if we think they're doing it wrong. I think that is part of the argument that is so important.
Well, let me put that. Do you lie awake at night thinking about sovereignty, do you know?
I really don't know. I lie awake with...
Do you know what it is?
I do, and I understand, but I lie awake with a sense of dread that we would leave the security that we've benefited from for many, many decades. My whole life we've been in Europe. You know, I would consider myself European, you know.
But I don't consider myself not European at all.
But you want to leave Europe?
But no, I want to leave the EU.
Not Europe.
It's not.
Let's just find out what does Europe actually mean to people in this room. Come on, what does Europe mean to any of you up there? I mean, what is Europe? What does it mean to you? Yes, you got your hand up here on the staircase. What does Europe mean to you, 501?
Well, to be honest, it's not a way that I'd ever identify myself. If someone asked me where I'm from, I would never say Europe. But I'd just like to ask Darren why he believes that Britain would be more liberal on our own. What's more liberal than being part of the world's biggest free trade area?
Darren, it's in your court.
It's not a free trade area. The single market is not about free trade. If it was, I wouldn't be sat here right now.
What else could a single market be about other than free trade?
The single market could be about trying to have make every single state have the same currency, the same.
We're out of the euro, which we're not going to have. It's not integration going forward. Isn't going to be any more. We're out of the ever closer union. What we've got is what we're going to have now going forward. So I don't see how we could be any more liberal than to be part of the biggest free trade.
If you look at the 5 presidents' report, I don't think that
ever
is
closer
the case.
union is on the agenda, I'm afraid, and that's why we want to leave.
But we have explicit opt-outs from ever closer union as well as.
No, that's not written in the
Lisa Nandy, you're a Labour MP. Now, the Labour Party's been very clear about has it? Yes, about it.
Yes, we have.
Yes. Mr Corbyn's been very clear about this. But what does it understand in terms of what would happen if we left Europe? What does Europe really mean to you as a Labour MP?
I think so far this debate has been incredibly negative, actually, on the whole, and it's been quite divisive. And actually, I agreed with what Darren said about wanting to see this be a prosperous, liberal country. It's just that I completely disagree with him about how we do that. Same with Narissa. I think the way that we have much more control over the major issues that affect our lives here in the UK, whether it's climate change or global terrorism or quality and quantity of the jobs that we're able to have in the UK, is through cooperation with other countries, so that we go to Europe, we make the case for raising standards for everyone across the board. We stop global companies from being able to pick and choose where they invest by driving down standards for everyone. By doing that, we raise our own ambition, the EU's ambition and the world's ambition.
Tom, here you are, the youngest Tory MP, the youngest English MP in the House. Go on, be young. Tell us all about why you care about getting out of Europe.
Well, look, I mean, you know, young people that I speak to in my own constituency, but also across the country as part of this campaign, are getting out there, engaging in this debate, and I think that's a really welcome thing. We're seeing young people energised by these arguments.
Well, but tell me this, when we're in the general election, where did Europe come in the order of precedence in the things that people asked you?
Well, in my constituency, it came up an awful lot. It was one of the regular issues that was raised with me by my constituents, a lot of my constituents saying that the EU had left its free trade common market footing and moved towards political integration. But what young people say to me is that they are very global in their outlook. I don't necessarily think that our young people see themselves as being particularly European. I think they see themselves as being global. But what they also get across to me in very strong terms is fairness. Now, look at the European Union we see today. It is a very bad thing for developing countries. We see very significant tariffs imposed on developing countries.
Well, before you get to the tariffs, you've raised something very, very interesting. Let's ask people, I mean, do you feel British, European or global? Answer me this question.
I feel nowadays, especially being a student and being young in this country, we were never raised as only belonging to one nation. We were raised with the internet, we were raised being connected, not just to people in the UK, but being connected to everyone in the whole world. Being part of Europe connects us with people not just in Europe, but out of Europe. It means we can travel, we can study, we can work. We have so many more opportunities.
Okay, that's good. She's global, she's part of the internet age. Who feels British? Yes, sir. What does it feel like to feel British?
Well, to feel British is really to identify with the set of institutions that governs you. So in that sense, I don't feel European because I don't identify with the EU institutions.
Do you feel global?
I do feel global. I'm British, I'm half Spanish as well. You know, I want to travel the world and all that. ¿Cómo estás?
Hey, muy bien. ¿Cómo está?
Muy bien, gracias.
Compañera.
So it's about recognising the institutions that govern you, so that when we have elections, regardless of whether you vote Tory or Labour or however, at the end of the day you come together with the outcome, and the government has to govern for all of the country. Whereas a lot of people don't feel connected with the European set of institutions, and that's where no European demos really exists. Or it might exist for some people.
When you go online and you find people in Malaysia or in Russia or in Germany or Spain, for instance, sort of, you know, coming in on your Facebook or whatever, I mean, do you suddenly say, hang on a minute, chaps, I'm British?
Well, I wouldn't introduce myself like, well, you don't really talk about that. You don't introduce yourself with your nationality, do you? You're probably talking about something specific like football or, I don't know, the cricket, but well, it seems a bit of a weird question, to be honest.
Anybody up there feel global or indeed, yeah? Yeah. Let me just hear from you as the last contribution.
I feel that many young people actually feel more connected culturally to countries such as Australia and America, particularly the USA. When we think of social media and Facebook and the TV shows we watch and the music we listen to, we don't necessarily think of Bulgaria or think of Germany.
So you feel bound by the English language?
Yeah, I feel like it is actually something which binds us a lot further than...
You feel part of Pax America?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's kind of, Darren, let's move on from the global matter to the question of human rights. Hasn't Europe done a lot for human rights?
Well, tell that to 7 of 28 member states who have a constitutional ban in place for same-sex marriage. You know, the Remain campaign like to talk about how...
Well, how many states in the United States have a constitutional ban against gay marriage?
I don't see anyone in the United States arguing that they can't self-govern themselves because the EU is... you know, putting human rights upon them. We had human rights before we...
I mean, a lot of people hate the federal government in America.
Well, the UK, we were not the first people in Europe to do gay marriage. We were way, way behind Spain and the Netherlands. And actually, the EU has been protecting my rights as previously a gay man and now a trans woman for the last 15 years. Now, Europe is not perfect. There are still places in Europe that would insist I was sterilised because I'm transgender.
There are, yes.
But we can, as a part of Europe, we can set the example and we can try to change that in places which haven't done that. I just think that breaking away...
on a global level, though.
The fact is that in the majority of EU countries, same-sex marriage is not allowed. And you look at, for example, women's rights. The 5 presidents of the European Union are all men.
But Tom,
this is unbelievable.
Tom,
it's not setting the right example.
You've left out Angela Merkel.
If you look at public...
and she's probably
and
worth
you would never
5
leave
presidents.
Angela Merkel out. If you look at public attitudes in a lot of countries where they're lagging behind in terms of protections on LGBT rights, it's actually that Europe has set a standard which those countries are now starting to follow. So I completely agree that it's not perfect, but what we've been able to do through membership of the European Union is put in place limited rights for people in those countries who would otherwise have none.
But
it's
that's
one of the
happening all
reasons,
around the
through that
world.
cooperation, through saying that to join the EU, you have to have decent human rights standards, you have to have freedom of expression, you have to have proper governments, that we've been able to raise standards in other countries and improve the lives of people around the world.
So that's a very good question. It's a good question, Tom.
influence.
Does Britain have international obligations? Do we have any obligation to assist the rights of other people?
Of course we do, and we would still be part of the G7, the G20, we'd be part of NATO,
The Strasbourg
UN,
Court?
these
The
big
Strasbourg Court for
international
Human Rights? Would we still be
institutions
part of
would be
that?
at the head of the Commonwealth
Would we?
Still. But look, the
No,
fact
you haven't
is,
answered my
but
question.
Let me just
No,
say
'cause
this,
I
John.
know you lot,
This
you want to be
this
out of
is very
Strasbourg as
important,
well.
John. Because, for example, a lot of the anti-slavery legislation that's been very, very important in getting a real breakthrough on this terrible, going on this terrible trade, human trafficking, has originated from the Council of Europe, of which we are a part. Parliamentarians from across Europe, including non-EU states, take part in those discussions and in those activities. That, of course, would still continue.
Right,
We won't
okay.
be taking the drawbridge up and isolating ourselves from the world. It's
You just want to stand on the
I want to
sidelines
move
of
on.
that?
No,
because
absolutely not.
I want to move on to a very important subject, which this whole campaign seems to be distilled to being, amongst those who are waging it, immigration. Oh, God. Is it about immigration?
I think that in large part it's being taken in that direction and distilled into it, as you say. I think just to go back very briefly to some of the things that have been said around here, what I feel you're really coming from is arguments to be leaders among Europe. I think that we regard Europe as, in many ways, something that happens to us rather than something that we're actually one of the largest, or the European Union. Well, we even regard that as something that happens to us rather than us being one of the largest and best represented countries, and we would be able to actually take the lead on these issues if they matter a lot to us, which they should. So I think
So just back on this question of can I ask you, Lisa, do you think immigration is the driver of this campaign?
I think there's a lot of people who are very concerned about immigration, and I don't think it's the only issue that matters to people. In fact, I think some of the other issues that we've just been talking about human rights and climate change, have been hugely missing from the debate so far. But what I would say to people who are concerned about immigration is that most of the people who are advocating to leave the European Union are not advocating to leave the single market. Now, any country that has tried to negotiate a trade deal to either be part of the single market or to trade with the single market has found that they have ended up signing up to free movement of labour. So if you think the answer to the problems that you perceive are being caused by immigration lies with coming out of the EU, I would just say to you that it is a con trick. They are telling you a false
question behind you, yes.
Sorry, can I just ask, what is wrong with the free movement of people? Now, it's something that I feel very, very proud of. I'm the son of a migrant, all my family are migrants, and the fact that we are here is because of the free movement of people. And when the people on the In campaign give in to that kind of argument where, oh, it's all right, like, this is why we need to stay in because then we can argue against it. No, the free movement of people is the reason why we have roads, why we have railways, why we have the NHS. It is being held up by immigrants from Europe.
Yeah.
So, let's get a... No, are you prepared to answer his point? No, I want someone to answer his point. Who's going to answer that? Yes. Well, I've had you already. Let's Gracia. Yes.
So your point on immigration, when it comes to the Leave campaign, a lot of people think that the Leave campaign are voting for immigration, as in we want to get people out of the country, and that is not the case. One of the biggest cases is the way that people are coming into this country is completely unfair. You have
Are you satisfied that everybody campaigning, I mean the leadership, that none of them actually are interested in getting people out of the country?
Obviously, a portion of them would be on both sides. You have people that are doing it for completely different reasons.
Do you think
But
there's
the
a whiff of
majority
racism about?
In an aspect, slightly, but talking to most of the people here who are voting about immigration is not because of we have too many people here, it's because of how unfair it is for people coming to this country. Like, for programs such as in universities, going to Europe and studying, that's great, we're having great teachers from Europe, but what about the rest of the
Your
world?
neighbour here thinks there is a whiff of racism.
I think, well, definitely, I think UKIP are racist. They want to take migrants. I think David Cameron's racist too. But for me, the biggest issue with the EU is refugees, which we've not mentioned once. 900 refugees drowned in the Mediterranean last week, and the EU is also racist. So there's a problem with this debate, the way we're debating it. The EU's border control is brutal. People are dying in the Mediterranean. I want to leave, not because I want to be with UKIP. I totally understand where Labour are coming from, fear, but I want to smash a hole in Fortress Europe. Fortress Europe has to go, because people are dying. Hundreds, thousands of people.
Lisa, what is your Europe doing about refugees?
Well, I mean, look, this is the issue here, is that we've got one of the biggest mass movements of people into mainstream Europe that we've seen since World War II. There are thousands of people suffering, dying, and the way that we have to deal with that is to work together to relieve the pressure on other European countries, to have a decent system where we support people in the place where they can best be supported. To my mind, one of the most shameful things that we've seen in the last few years is David Cameron standing up in Europe trying to refuse to take 3,000 child refugees when we've got thousands of children who desperately need some support. Now, the way that we change that is to cooperate with other countries to make sure that people have found a place of safety and support.
But I want to pause it there because we're blessed to have a poet with us, Anthony. And Anthony, would you just read your little section of your wonderful poem about immigrants?
Sure, this is taken from a poem called How the Sky Finds Us. And the first part of the poem looks at the unlawful killing of black boys in America, and the second part looks at the refugee crisis. So the extract says, "There is no grave like the ocean. Paper mouths try to close off the leak. Quick, breathe back the drowning, pray away the flood. Pencil boats snap like rage into shattered fractions. 1,000 lives break from within it. Lives so giant and small, finding the end of the sea and the top of a headline with eyes still fixed on God."
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Tom, Britain and refugees, Europe and refugees, your thoughts?
Well, I would argue that if we didn't have free movement from the European Union, we could probably do more to help with the refugee crisis. But I also just want to go back to this issue.
Hang on a minute, we've just said we will only take 20,000 over the next 5 years, and we've had a tremendous fight over 3,000 unaccompanied children.
Well, the government
is that a great record?
The government has listened and has altered its position in relation to
and what is that new position then?
Well, the government is saying that we're going to continue to provide more and more help to the region. The most effective way of stopping people from making perilous journeys to Europe is to try and provide as much support in the region as possible. But of course, where we've got vulnerable children, we should be doing as much as we can to help. And I think it's actually quite shameful.
But I also think there's a reason people are getting onto boats that are snapping in the middle of the ocean, and that's because they're fleeing something worse.
There are neighbouring countries that should be doing more to help with this crisis.
And we should be cooperating to make sure everybody does.
I just want to stick with immigration for the moment and refugees.
I just wanted to say that, you know, people are not born in... People don't want to be in a war, you know. These refugees, they do not have a choice but to leave their countries. No child and father and parent or whatever, they don't want to make that treacherous journey over the sea and be at risk of, you know, dying or whatever.
But you're somebody wavering over which way to vote.
I am wavering.
What does that crisis make you feel?
I am wavering. However, I am seeing the crisis that young people, refugees, everyone, you know, that we're in at the moment. I'm leaning slightly towards a Remain because I have seen lots of benefits of staying in. Like, for example, volunteering opportunities, employment opportunities. Wouldn't that all be at risk if we leave the EU? Where would we, young people, be standing in the next 10 years if we leave?
Darren, your friend Donald Trump wants a wall. Do you want a wall?
I do not want a wall. So the Conservatives they sent out a leaflet. On the back of this leaflet, it says here, prevention of non-EU families being brought into Britain, as if non-EU families are like Ebola. What we Vote Leave say is, look, we have an immigration system which is discriminatory from those from outside of the European Union. The European Union want to build a wall, like Donald Trump, around the EU. Not a physical wall, of course, but they want to keep out non-EU families. It's written here in print.
The European Union have taken 1 million so far, admittedly mainly Germany.
Yes, but in our country, you know, the government are saying that because of free movement of people, pressures from free movement of people...
But surely the issue tonight is, has Britain got a better record on dealing with the people drowning in the Mediterranean than the European Union?
That Britain...
I have to say, John, I have to say, it's an important point, this, because the United Kingdom has given the second largest amount in aid to this crisis. We've also given more than the rest of the European Union.
How many people
combined,
have we
so
taken
I would
in,
argue
How many people have we
taken
taken in?
relation. Now,
how many people have we given sanctuary?
But Lisa, I go back to the earlier point that the best way...
3,000 children.
How on earth can we be expected to have 1 million people come to our shores when we're struggling to house our own people?
So this is an issue, and you're a waverer. This is an issue which perhaps tips you towards leave?
To be honest, I didn't actually realise it was an issue for me until this came up. To me, actually, immigration is almost a non-issue in this debate. You look at Australia, you look at New Zealand, you look at America, they all have their own immigration policies, and I think that, if we stay, then we will still be subject to EU quotas, but if we leave, we can set that ourselves. So I didn't actually realise that it was an issue for me until now.
But look, part of the reason that we are arguing about whether we will or we won't take 3,000 child refugees from mainland Europe is because we do have immigration control and we do have immigration policy.
But it's
That's
not
why
equal.
we get to make a choice.
Yes, it's not equal. It's not globally equal.
These are genuine concerns, aren't they? I mean, people are... These are quite heartfelt thoughts.
I think it is. I think what has left a bad taste in my mouth is that throughout this whole referendum, the fact we're even having this referendum is because while the Brexit people have remained on just the right side of racist, actually, I think they are...
That's very unfair.
And can I finish? I think, however, what they are doing is they are very much trading on fears about immigration. And when arguments about economics have collapsed, they've gone straight back to immigration or straight back to the NHS. And it feels like some very lazy...
Can I just come in?
In terms of
You were nodding your head, but you're for leave, right?
Yeah, I just believe that the Leave campaign has always gone to immigration, and it's a very, very stupid topic to go to. When you disagree with...
But you are a Leave campaigner,
yeah. When you disagree with immigration, you're bound to vote for Brexit in the first place. So what we need to do is go for the swing voters and go for the, is my job going to be secure? Do I believe in sovereignty? And that's
right.
Not immigration.
Now, Tamsin, you're a local councillor, so
yes,
you're a woman of authority.
I would also like to say that I'm actually 21. I was 20 when I got elected, so I'm one of the young politicians that was being said.
So you're the counterbalance to Tom over there.
Yes. I would like to say that I put it that the people who come here to work will then have a fairer deal if we leave the EU. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, you may be. What places can currently do, there's a local manufacturer that does this, who I won't name, they can advertise in places like Poland and Romania, but they are able to advertise at the Polish or Romanian minimum wage. And surely, if people are going to come here to work, they should be paid our minimum wage, not minimum wage.
Okay, fine. With a massive question still waiting, there's still a lot of other topics to be dealt with. Let's pause here in this great Norman castle for a moment, because although we're hearing from an audience and panel here positively, really absolutely young in its makeup, I mean, nobody much older than 30 and most people between 15 and 28, 25, it would be fair to say that both campaigns have, for the most part, been somewhat grey-haired and grizzled, with one survey showing pensioners from here in East Anglia amongst the most likely to vote Leave. I've been asking some of the older citizens in this city of Norwich what their message would be to these younger voters. I produce an 18-year-old student and put them in front of you, you would say what?
Now, I would tell them that the EU is a failing economy and although I like the concept of it, we are not part of it. We're not in the Schengen group, we're not part of the Euro, so we're outsiders anyway.
That's your lovely wife?
Out.
Out.
Definitely.
And why?
Why? What is the point of joining a failing economy?
What would you tell them?
It's about time we took our own borders back and looked after our own people.
Yeah.
Definitely think to come out.
Really?
Yeah.
And why is that?
Well, mainly for the immigration and for the borders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is my main concern.
They should vote to stay in because of the financial implications of going out.
I'm undecided, I'm afraid.
So you would say to them,
Think very hard because it is their future.
husband having any influence on you?
None.
Not at all.
Well, they always say all the Polish are better workers. Who's actually standing up saying, there are some good British workers? I'm not working at the moment. I can't get a job. And everyone keeps saying, oh, how good workers are. Who is actually standing up for the British people?
So the way to do that is to vote out?
100%.
What would you say to young people?
How they should
stay
vote?
in? To be in.
Ah.
Yeah, my husband was Polish.
Yeah.
More so, what did you do?
No, Dad was Polish,
Yeah.
and we work as a European community, don't we?
I think you're
Everybody
being
together.
tutored by your daughter.
Not much.
I've just totally not thought about the subject from the point of view of an 18-year-old, so
Would it be rude to say maybe you should, in a sense? Isn't one voting for everybody's tomorrows?
I've thought for myself, the European government just isn't listening to our complaints, and I feel the only thing we can do about it is to say no.
So your advice would be?
Stay in. Better the devil you know.
I don't like the way the common market's going. We've got to say no to put our point of view. And I have a feeling if we say no, I think a lot of other countries will agree with us.
Well, they should vote how they feel, but as long as they go and vote.
Oh, that's excellent.
It's the easiest thing to do.
Well, back now to the young people that are gathered here, and listen, you folks who are for Remain, those old folks aren't with you, most of them, I'm afraid. So what message have you got for them? You saw what they had for you. Yes?
I think that the European Union, I think Britain being part of the European Union, I think it has more international clout, and I think that, it is our future, and I think, major issues at the moment, like climate change, international, terrorism, things like that. I think we will, these are issues that, they ignore borders. They don't care, about borders. I think, it's incredibly important that we remain in.
Right,
just
but this is a big sort of generational issue, isn't it? Because basically there are probably more of them going to vote than most of you. So, I mean, what would you say to the old folks?
I would say I've just come from taking history exams at uni, so I would say that I think it's sad that people who've lived through the 20th century and have seen the wars that have taken place don't see the benefits of a united European community.
That's very interesting. War. I didn't expect anybody young to raise the question of war and peace, because you've lived in total peace, with the exception possibly of Bosnia, the year you were born, or later than that, I guess. Yes.
A lot of those comments from the video all seem to be fearful or sceptical of difference, and I think that's probably where the main generational gap comes in. I feel like people our age are far less afraid of difference. And yes, Europe uses different money, and yes, people in Europe speak different languages, but surely those difference of opinions can combine to create a superior opinion or a superior ideology which people could then
That's
follow.
a very interesting point, that people in your generation are much less afraid of difference. That's true, isn't it? And therefore, if you're not afraid of difference, what is there to be afraid of?
I think the EU discriminates against countries like African countries and Asian countries by the massive tariff. I think there's a 6.5% tariff, EU tariff, on roasted coffee, and that means that they export unroasted coffee and Germany roasts the coffee. That means Germany exports more coffee than the whole of Africa does. I think that's wrong.
So
It's
it
completely
may have
wrong.
come down to coffee, but basically you are no because you want to embrace Africa.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I
your,
don't mind. I like the
that's
immigration.
your
I'm
message.
pro freedom of movement.
Yeah,
but
very briefly, you, my dear.
I just wanted to say that I think there's a generational gap because the older generation has seen this country in the EU and out of the EU And we're having trouble deciding because we've only seen one side of it. We haven't seen what Britain was like outside. Of course, we know like the historical events.
But surely the point they were making was that they had, well, one of them was making was that they'd grown up in the aftermath of war.
I know. I don't think. Well, there's going to be war. There's the Iraq War when we were alive.
And I meant war in Europe.
Yeah. Well, war can't be avoided. Unfortunately, I don't think.
Well, there hasn't been war in South America.
Okay, yes.
We are decades into an organisation that has, I think, at least played some part in avoiding war in Europe, and I think that that's a thing that's worth. I in no way
the EU got
disagree
the
with you
Nobel Peace Prize for the efforts that it made to aid reconciliation in the Balkans and have decades and decades of peace in Europe. We shouldn't take that for granted.
Well, the fact that we do take that for granted, I would love for my children to also take peace in Europe for granted in the way that I take it for granted, and I would love that to go down every generation.
Well, let's just test opinion for the moment. I mean, is this about immigration? How many people think this is about immigration? How many people think it's about the economy? That's interesting. That's one thing which unites you all. And how many people think that it is about war and peace? Well, so economy is really it. So now, what about the engagement of young people? I mean, what could these old grey-haired grizzles, as we talked about, what could they do to attract your vote? You're a swing voter. What could they do to persuade you?
The problem with this the way that older voters appeal to this generation is that politicians don't actively try to engage young people in politics, and politics...
Advise them. How could they?
I think politics education in the UK really needs to change because we don't get a lot of information in schools about how the British electoral system works. And, you know, we don't get told that we need to go register to vote, and this is all based on social media. There's not a lot of official cohesion.
You know, I think that's a brilliant point, but there's one surefire way to get politicians to start paying attention to young people, and that's for all of you and your friends to go out and vote. And then we'll be...
Well, you're the younger generation.
I am, yes.
How are you engaging with them?
Well, I'm running a campaign called Believe, which is primarily a social media campaign, and we're posting animated graphics, nice shiny things that attract our generation that is of the internet. Absolutely not.
Hang on a minute.
One thing that I am fed up with this, with the Remain campaign, admittedly, is the way that people keep talking about cheap flights, mobile phone tariffs. That is equally as condescending. Saying that people need to be attracted by shiny graphics, memes, hashtags, and lols is the most condescending thing.
I was about to say that the voting campaign. The Remain campaign had the whole vote in and talk to Gran. I mean, come on, my grandmother would tell me where to go if I tell her to tell. But what I'm saying is, I'm actually slightly being sarcastic. You know, the Remain campaign are campaigning on nice shiny things. We saw that video there. They think that we are all attracted to this nice shiny facade.
Yeah. Shiny things like jobs.
I'd rather campaign on shiny
things. 3 billion.
I don't think that the way the campaign is run should sway your opinion. If you have an opinion and you have a strong opinion, you shouldn't let... I am strongly vote in, and I don't agree with the way that they've been advertising it towards us, but that doesn't mean it's going to change my view just because they've got shiny things.
I mean, it's true. The Remain campaign, I mean, does Gordon Brown talk to the young, or does Mark Carney? I mean, what do they mean to the younger generation? Who could? Is Eddie Izzard the answer?
Well, I tweeted, I write young adult fiction, so a lot of my readers are kind of 15, 16, and I sort of said to them, if you could vote, you know, like the way they did in Scotland, if you could vote in this referendum, you know, what would sway you? And a lot of them did say a lot of the issues that have been here tonight, but I'm going to be honest, a lot of them did just say, I don't like Boris Johnson, I don't like Michael Gove, I don't like Ian Duncan Smith. And so I think it's kind of, there is a key issue with that as well, a personality issue.
Now, there's a massive hands upstairs in the Minstrels Gallery. Where's the microphone? So let's have it over here. Come on, let's go for it, darling. Just give it to that's it, go for it. Hello?
I think a lot of the things that are being discussed are obviously really important points. But for me, the reason I'm undecided is on the issue of trade. And I don't think that's something that maybe has been part of part of the debate as much as I would have liked it to have been. The trade deficit in the UK has reached an all-time high, and currently we're not able to negotiate our own deals with the EU.
But I'm wondering how many hearts and minds are going to be swung by appealing to the trade deficit. Surely this is also... Is this an affair of the heart or an affair of the brain?
That does tie in with the economy.
Let me just ask you undecided people, because I'm just wondering whether there's anything being said today. I sense there has been with you, but I feel, has there anything been said today which has made you come off the fence? Anybody come off the fence? Anyone decided how to vote? Not one of you?
Can I just say it's so nice to hear some actual facts thrown about. There's so much rubbish that seems to be said about a bomb being put under the economy. Like, can you actually give us some of the facts? I mean, I don't know about everybody else. I've had to go online and it's so difficult to find it.
Yeah, I've actually had to find out myself. Like, these documents are on the government website, and they're basically just documents that the first one is all the rights and obligations that EU members have, and then the second is possible models and alternatives being outside the EU. I never really found that out until I suddenly came across that on social media. Like, how many other people here have actually managed to find out about and actually know about those documents?
Right. Well, let's be candid, Tom. Surely what we've actually heard here tonight is that actually neither of these campaigns has really engaged with young people. They've not told them any real facts that are not challengeable. Just about everything that's ever been said by anybody has been challengeable.
There's been a lot of opinion expressed, hasn't there, on both sides of the argument, a lot of it exaggerated.
And you're about to express some more.
Certainly. but I think politicians have got to talk about these issues in a moderate, sensible way and using appropriate language, and that hasn't always happened.
Is bomb a sensible word? Is bomb a sensible word?
No, I think it's a ridiculous
You've said that of your own Prime Minister.
I'm not finding that particularly helpful or conducive to having a productive debate in this country, but I thought the young man raised a really important point a few minutes ago that I know resonates amongst young people about trade with the developing world. At the moment, we are part of a customs union that keeps poor people poor. I'm ashamed of that. I think it's.
I hear a quick word.
I think the best thing on this was said by the young lady over there, because it is. Like, I think young people are still people, and as you say, like, what does Mark Carney have to say to young people? It matters more that the governor of the Bank of England thinks it's a mistake than it does him releasing
I'm going to have to leave your rhetorical question in the air, because we've come to the end, sadly. All I can say is thank you all very warmly for coming here tonight, and to say to you, that's Channel 4 News from Norwich Castle, the Norman Conquest and the EU debate. Good evening, that's Channel 4 News.